Hey everybody, this is Joe Payne here again for the City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Department with another chess lesson. As I've said before, you can look back at earlier videos and see I broke down how all the pieces move. That's a bit of a doozy. If you are a true chess beginner, you're going to want to check out that video. And then I went into the basics of a checkmate. Today, if you already have some chess understanding, this is a good lesson for you because it's going to go into some of the basic principles in the opening of the game. There are three phases of most chess games: the opening, the middle game, and the end game. Okay, so if you're unlucky to get checkmate in the middle game, you don't have an end game, obviously. But the opening, middle game, and end game. So today we're going to look at a couple common openings and just the basic principles behind them so you can understand what is the point of chess, what am I trying to do when I play this game. So here we go. All right, everybody, so if you remember, the game of chess begins like this, right? You have king, queen, bishops, knights, and rooks, and this front row of pawns in front of them. Now, when we start out, there's only one piece that can feasibly make a move before a pawn. That's the knight, because it can hop over pieces. It's the only piece that can do that. But all your other pieces are stuck behind the row of pawns until you begin to move your pawns, right? And to get them out of the way. Now, this is called the opening of the game, right? The light side always moves first. So what's the whole point of the opening? Well, the whole point of the opening is to get control of the center of the board. In fact, it's said that the most important squares in the very beginning of the game are these four right here. So you can see for the light side, this is the middle two spaces on its side of the board. And then for the dark side, it has these two spaces on its side of the board. This line here is the middle of the board, right? So here you have these four in the very center of the board, and it's very important to try to control them. Whoever controls the center of the board early on is going to have a better time attacking the other side, controlling what all the pieces do and protecting their own pieces and attacking the opponents, okay? So one of the most common opening moves in the game of chess is the king's pawn opening. And all that means is, here's the king, right? Here's your light square king. It has a pawn in front of it, and we are going to double pawn, right? Remember, pawns move only one space, only forward, except for their first move. They can double jump. They can do two space move, only their first move. So it's called double pawning. So the king's pawn opening is a very famous, well-known opening, and a very common response is the reply, the king's pawn reply for the dark side. So boom, there you go. You see that? But before I do that, you can see that this pawn here is now controlling. It's taken this space. It's not under attack yet, and it's controlling, encroaching on these two spaces on the side of the dark side. Remember, pawns attack diagonal once over and not in front, right? So the common reply is the king's pawn opening, and look, it locks in the king's pawn of the light side. These two are now locked into each other. They can't move forward because they're blocking each other, and they're kind of attacking past each other. Now the dark side pawn is attacking this dark square and this dark square. So it's now encroaching on the light side of the board. So already you can see it's a pretty even matchup. Now I want to look at what's called the Italian opening. So check this out. You often see a lot of beginners when they start playing, the dark side will mirror the light side. And let's just kind of explore what that would look like. So in the Italian opening, it's very common to move the knight out pretty quickly. Right? So remember, the knights move over two, up two, or back, or left or right two, and then over one, right? So we went from this dark square to this light square. And now look, if you look at what this knight is up to now, it has an attack over to, up to and over one of the dark square pawn here, right? This is a possible attack by this knight. So automatically by making this move now, the light side is threatening the only piece that the dark side has out. So what does the dark side do? Well, it could reply by maybe pushing this pawn and just connecting it, right? So now that this pawn protects this one, you see this a lot. Pawns create like a chain, a diagonal chain where they protect each other. This pawn's protected by this pawn's protected by this pawn. But you can also reply with your own knight move, doing this, and this knight over up 2 over 1, and now look, over to up 1. It's protecting that that pawn that is under attack. Okay, so this also brings into another important thing. We get our pawns out early to try to take space on the board, but another important thing is to get your other pieces on the board, the pieces behind the pawns. This is called development. You want to develop your pieces. You want to get your bishops and your knights, and eventually your castles will get involved, but they're all the way on the end, so they don't get involved until a bit later. But you want to get your bishops and your knights out on the board, controlling territory, making attacks or getting ready to make attacks, okay? So here you can see this is almost like a mirror image of each other, right? That's kind of what we have going on here. You have, knights, in this case, this knight is attacking this pawn, this knight is protecting its pawn. You could have moved as dark this knight, and now it's attacking this pawn. You could make you could trade this. He could attack, and then that knight, and then that knight, and now you have 2 knights out in the center of the board. Let's not do that. Let's go back here to just this situation where this knight controls this one. Now, what makes it officially an Italian opening is when then the light square side brings out the bishop, usually to this square right here, okay? So you can see the bishop swings out, and this is important. It's, it's out in the middle of the board. It now has, more range to attack. But if you can see, the bishop is bearing down on this pawn right here. This pawn is right next to the dark square king, and this is a very weak pawn. A lot of in the game of chess, it's you want to get an advantage as quick as you possibly can, and the light side having being able to go first, that just makes them more able to get the upper hand here and attack. And so this square is vulnerable. So the dark side needs to do something about that. But so this is called the Italian opening, and that is what characterizes an Italian opening by white is king, pawn, knight, and bishop out, first 3 moves. Okay, so let's say that the dark side will just push its knight out here, and so the dark side isn't too worried about this pawn right now. He's making an attack now on this pawn, right? So the white side can respond, and something you see quite typical is just to push this pawn 1. Why? Because it's making the pawn chain here. It's protecting that pawn, and now look, we've opened up this diagonal so the dark square bishop can come out. We already have the light square bishop out comfortably, so we can bring this pawn up, which would have blocked it in. And so, so it's out, and then we can bring out this bishop if we want. And let's say then for its next move, the dark side is going to move its bishop out. Again, almost like a mirror. You can see these 2 bishops side by side here. Okay. Now, here's where I want to bring up something very interesting and very crucial in chess in the beginning, and that's the move of castling. Now, I didn't bring this up in the first lesson about how all the pieces moves because it's a little complicated. But here's how castling works. Okay, it's a very important move. It's the only move in chess where 2 pieces move at once. There's only one move you could make in chess where 2 pieces move at the same time, and that's castling. How does castling work? Well, it's a king move, really. It's a move that the king makes, and it can only occur when the spaces in between a king and a castle are open, It can only occur when these spaces are not under attack. Okay, so if I had some dark side piece attacking any of these two squares, we couldn't castle right here. And the other thing is this has to be both the king's first move and this castle's first move. Okay, so three things. The squares have to be cleared of other pieces. These two pieces get to move, and these two spaces cannot be under attack, and it has to be the first move of the king and the first move of the castle. Here's how it works. The king gets to, oh, this is also the only move where the king moves two spaces. Watch. Two spaces for the king, and then the castle goes on the other side. So I'm just going to show you again. These two squares are free and open. They're not under attack, and neither of these pieces have moved. This is the fourth move, right, of the light side, and you can see that these are all pieces we've got out onto the board. And ta-da! You're supposed to move the king first. You'll even get docked in official chess rules if you use both your hands to move them, because really it is a king move. The king makes the two space move, the only time it gets to do that, and the castle moves on the other side. And like I said before, you know, that is the only time two pieces get to move in the game of chess. Now, why castle? Why do we do this? Well, it's a way of protecting your king. Remember, the whole point of the game is to protect the king, right? Or really, for the other side, to attack the king and pin it in, checkmate it, and give it nowhere to run or hide, and that's how you win the game. So castling protects the king, gets it behind a nice little wall of pawns. We haven't moved these pawns too much. We focused on the center with these center pawns in the beginning, and we keep this straight line of pawns. We castle, so now our king is off to the side, the king is protected, and we can focus more on amassing an attack on the other side. And notice, if the dark side wanted to reply in kind, they could, because they have the same situation here. The two squares were open. It was the first move for these two, and these squares were not under attack. They were safe behind these pawns, and so now that threat from this bishop is protected by this this knight here, or this castle here rather, the rook. So so this is a very common opening you'll see in chess. As you can see, we already have you know, 3 out of 4 of the knights and the bishops are out on the board making attacks or you know, threatening pieces and working together. This is the thing. Once you develop more attacks, this will be in the next lesson, you're going to make these pieces work together. But so that is a very common opening, the Italian defense, or the Italian opening. Let me show you one quick thing. Let's rewind. Imagine we've just rewound this whole game back to square one. Pun totally intended with that, square one. And so here we go. Boom. So here we are back in the beginning. I want to show you one possible other reply to white pushing the king pawn. And it's one of my favorite moves, and it's called the Sicilian Defense. Boom. Look at that. What? So where most people are used to just mirroring what the light side does when they play dark, the Sicilian defense, as a response to this first move in the Italian opening, is to say, nah, you could do what you want. That's fine. I don't care. I'm going to do this. And so it's basically the dark side playing its own game. In fact, I believe that most of the time AI, you know, chess computers, supercomputers will choose the Sicilian defense in reply to this opening from the light side. And so as you can see, whereas the you know, the light side is getting control of these squares, now the dark side is getting control of these squares without locking itself into the light side pawn, you know, where it can't move. So that's just a way of playing. A lot of people play chess where they're constantly, if they're the dark side, they're just constantly reacting to what the white side is doing or mirroring it. Well, that's, you know, you're not playing your own game. You're not dictating how the game goes. You're just reacting, and you're not really strategizing. It's like the old saying, the best defense is a good offense, right? So, or maybe it's the other way around, right? So that is the opening game in chess. You get your your pieces out early. Try to develop your knights and your bishops. Get them into the game. Take control, of course, with the pawns early because they're expendable. But then try to protect them or attack the opponents with your other minor pieces so you can castle early. I can't stress enough how important castling is. If your opponent can get an attack on you before you castle, oh boy, you're in trouble. All right, everybody, as you can see, we got a lot of factors that go into how you want to open your chess game. So, you have different openings, the Italian opening, you have different responses like the Sicilian, my favorite. But remember the general principles that you want to do, which is take control of the center and develop your pieces. Get pieces off your back row. That's what you want to do, and castle early. So those are the basic principles. Again, I've been Joe Payne here with you here for the City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Department, talking about the classic game of chess. Thanks again for watching, everybody.